Through with his adventures.
So welcome.
We're still voting? Nice to meet you.
Take your seats. We're gonna get this show on the road.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now, Mary Brady will be singing. Start Twinkle Fanning.
Does she want a mic?
I don't think she needs one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pardon? Yes, can everyone please stand?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the hope of the brave?
Thank you, Mary. That was absolutely beautiful. Okay. Oh, come on in, guys. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Margaret DeBellis, and I am from beautiful Horseshoe Lake here in Stafford. I will be your host for the evening. Hope there's no objections to that. I just wanted to say that on behalf of the Stafford Preservation Group, I want to welcome everyone here to Stafford's 7th Biennial Candidates Night. Also, I want everyone here to know that Stafford's Preservation Group is a nonpartisan organization whose members do hands-on work to help safeguard local and state democracy issues. We are involved directly in shaping topics that keep this community strong. I have a little quote that I would like to read to you folks tonight that should set the mood for this evening and should allow everyone to know that your right to vote, your ideas are really important. This is a quote by Robert Kennedy. Each time a man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against any injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. And so that's a beautiful saying, and I want you to kind of keep that in your mind tonight and know that every single person in this room, and every single person, you're in this room, but that is a candidate here tonight, can just make a significant difference, not only in the town of Stafford, but in the world, and I'm a firm believer of that. So this evening, our emphasis, of course, is on voting and the process which aids citizens in their clarity at the voting booth. Before we go any further, I'd like to just take one moment and ask everyone if they would please check to make sure that their cell phones are turned off so that the candidates and the audience are not interrupted by any ringing, or in my case, barking. My phone does bark. It does. I want to now introduce our evening's moderator, right here next to me, Norm Gayford. He is a professor of English at GCC. Okay, Norm, we'll be back to you in just a minute. The Stafford Preservation wishes to acknowledge all those who have made this evening possible by their research, planning, participation, and donations. A special thanks goes out to Linda Call for making the scrumptious looking Boldt pie that we will all, well, not me, but you will have a chance to win.
Oh, I think we ought to clap for the pot.
Okay, and also a big thank you to John Swanson for providing the cider and donuts, which we'll be indulging in later. Okay, I want to just take another minute here to point out everything that you may have found on your chairs, hopefully did. The first one is the Meet the Candidates night. There is one correction in there, and thank you for whoever pointed it out. The town clerk, it's vote for 1, not 2. So under town clerk, vote for 1. Okay, so you can follow this program. Hopefully it'll bring you to where we are. In addition, the next one is Win the Door Prize, that yummy looking vote pie up there. Fill this out. Don't forget to fill out your vote pie. And I will be collecting them later. Then there are several different 3x5, 4x6 cards. Oh yes, and Marianne Rena happens to have a whole handful of them. They're extra, so if anybody needs, if anyone needs additional cards to write questions, please just raise your hand or come up front and grab some. But I will be going around with some in a little while. So the colors basically don't mean anything. Everyone was wondering, are these color coordinated or is there a special? No, they aren't. It's just that, unfortunately, Office Max in Batavia, as many of you may know, went out of business. And when Sandy went to get the cards, that's what they had. So that's what we got. And then when you fill out your questions, whatever, you also probably found a little red paper there, which is, are they answering questions? And it's just a little guide for you folks. You may want to look at it just to see how your folks are doing here tonight. If they're, answering the questions, do they seem sincere? Yes, they do. It's just a way to keep track of what's going on. And in addition, Last but not least on your seat is a picture of the sample ballot. This will be the ballot that you'll be seeing when you come to vote next Tuesday, November 7th. And make sure that you look it over so when you come in, you know where your candidates are and who you want to vote for, because they're stretched out, they're in different places, and you know, even all the way down to the bottom here. So look it over, and if you have any questions, somebody can help you. Okay. So after that, I'd like to take a moment here to introduce the candidates for tonight, the candidates that are here with us tonight. Andrew Young, he is the incumbent running for Genesee County Legislature. I did have to tell him, though, that he was kind of overshadowed by his son, is Andrew Young, who is currently in the National Dreamvention Contest,
That's right.
competing with another 4 students who are inventors, competing for $250,000. And he has a great invention. It's called the toaster shooter. And I actually saw it in action. It's a toaster, and I've burnt my hand so many times that it's just like the toast finishes and it pops right out onto the plate. You do not have to stick your fingers in or stick a knife in trying to electrocute yourself. So, Andrew, I'm sorry, that's your claim to fame.
I guess that's what it is. It's not a bad Andrew'sInvention.com if you want to go see it. And we would hope that you vote. There's a voting process between now and the 27th, and it really is more of a popularity contest now than it is an invention contest, but these other 4 candidates are from all across the country in larger markets, so we're kind of pooling our talents here, and hopefully we can win it for them.
Good. So, welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along here, our next candidate here is Julie Scheuerlein, running for the Town of Stafford Town Clerk. We have Ron Panek. He is the incumbent running for Town of Stafford Town Council. Robert Mattice, also running as the incumbent for Town of Stafford Town Council. We have Michelle McEwen running for the Town of Stafford Town Clerk. Jacqueline Cavanaugh running for Town of Stafford Town Council. And Steve Boldt, the incumbent running for the Town of Stafford Highway Superintendent. Welcome and good luck to all of you. Before we move along, I just want to tell you just a couple more things, and then I'm going to be turning it over to Norm. There's a couple of handouts up front there by the pie, and one of them is the New York State ballot proposals. There's 3 of them, and you can pick that up in case, you know, if you'd like to get yourself brushed up on what's going on. And also up there is another small little yellow sheet right here, and what this is this is the Property Rights Foundation of America. What they did is they put out a little blurb here saying that if you're interested for your property rights, you will want to vote no on number 1 and yes on number 3. And as I said, it's up there on the table. Last but not least, there is one more piece of literature up there. And what it is, it's the Video News Service has put this out. It is for the Stafford Solar Education Program, and it outlines 3 speakers who presented their views on industrial solar. So please feel free to take as many as you want. Okay, and now Norm Gayford, our moderator for the evening. Norm?
I'm a professor, but I am not going to be as wordy as you might fear. Don't worry, all my notes are here. But I am going to say something to you that I've been eager to do so, even though my phone is on, the silent is on, so it's not going to hurt you, but you need to hear this. Some of you may know The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or those stories. Whatever happens tonight, I hope we are clearer than this. Bilbo Baggins says at his birthday party, I don't know half of you as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you as well as you deserve. And you have to think hard about that. So we're going for clarity tonight. I'm happy to be here. It's a great honor to be asked by a friend of a friend to show up. And the great, I think, advantage to this is I really am like Bilbo. I don't know almost any of you. I have no stake in this, and my politics is meaningless. This is a moderating situation. I bring neutrality to you. Candidates meetings have been around in this country since back to the 1920s, and no matter anyone's politics, the fact that people stand up and ask for votes and are willing to move out of the crowd and say, yes, I would give of my time to try to do this, I think is an honorable thing. So tonight is the kind of thing where you're going to be asking questions through those pretty cards from Office Max. And I will be sorting your cards. You're anonymous. I'm not going to be reading your names from the card. I'll be asking the questions about this. These meetings are a service to you. And I think that everybody who puts these together is doing democracy. I truly mean this because I'm a geek. A great service. You're doing everybody a great service by being here. Some of you have things you want to ask. Some of you are curious, but you're here instead of at home in front of your TV sets, and that's important because it gives the candidates a chance to speak to you, to answer your questions, and it gives you a chance to measure them a bit. So these are special events. This is not a debate. This is a question and answer. And so my moderating of this is going to be kind of odd, I suppose, because I'm not a bullying sort, but I am an English teacher. I'm a wordsmith, I'm a public speaking teacher, and I'm a philosophy teacher. And so I will be listening to see if the question's really being answered or not. And part of my job, somebody has to do it, is to say, could we get back on track, as well as keep the time for the question. So this is informational. There's not a hidden agenda. There's not a plan other than to give people every possible way to ask you good folks some questions. We know that voting is essential, and so we are very happy to present this for you tonight. And so I'm supposed to remind you of a couple of things. Please think, even right now, I'd appreciate that the eyes are here because you're very polite, but really, you've got cards in front of you. If you have a question you want to ask tonight, please write your question down. Do not be one of those folks who says, well, I wish I'd said this when I left, or if I really thought about it, I could have said that. No, you can ask a question. The more specifically you ask the question, the better it's going to be for the process. Secondarily, please make clear on your card to whom you are asking the question. If it's a question you want everyone to answer, okay, but otherwise tell me the person so I can address it to that person. This will keep this more efficient. You're asked to think about things. Are they specific? These good folks need to be specific for you. Are they seemingly knowledgeable on what they're talking about? That's part of the job that they're after. The question about are they sincere, well, you know what Will Rogers said and many other fine people. Sincerity is something that can be projected even if it doesn't necessarily exist. I'm not so worried about the sincerity as are they answering your questions? Keeping track of the topics. Are your priority issues being discussed? You've got a chance. If you have an issue you want to discuss, put on the card. We're hoping you stay and have some of this delicious vegetables that you folks have presented so that we can talk afterward. And then we have November 7th coming up, and this should help you about that. So as we proceed, I'm going to ask you to take, we're going to give you about 5 minutes The reason for that is, in 30 seconds, you'll say, no, I'm not going to write anything. And then you start thinking about it, oh, I might have something to say. And by 5 minutes, I want to know this. So put that on your card. I'm not going to read names. You do not have to sign your cards. And it does not have to be the hot pink card. It can be the hot orange card. And then we'll collect the cards and get this show on the road. So please think hard, write questions, and remember, as you've got the cards in front of you, you're thinking, make sure that you point out to whom you want the questions asked, of whom you want the questions asked. And then we'll wait. We have music to wait with.
No,
You
but.
want to sing? You got another tune? No. Well, they want to ask them questions. That's okay. I
No,
can
no,
read
no,
it.
ask another,
Oh, I see.
Great scene, very nice.
No, because that'll make me more of a debate format, so we're not going to go.
but I will. Okay. I'll make sure it's good too. Whoever it is we go through.
Oh, and please make them legible. I will do my handwriting is the worst of anyone I know, so I'm likely to be able to read yours, but do give it a go.
Oh, yeah, and don't forget, while you're at it, please fill out your drawing for the Boldt apple pie, because I'll be around to collect those too, okay?
That's not a party. Vote apple pie.
Right, Boldt apple pie. It's not a party, it is an actual apple pie.
Nobody recruited me for that.
You know, I was thinking earlier that this could be, instead of candidates night, it could be like the candidates party. And what I mean by that is an actual party where we all come together from the community and we ask questions. We're going to be having something to eat, which you would have at a party, but also I just don't want, especially the candidates, to be nervous. I know there's some incumbents up there that are like, this is old hat or whatever, but you know, just don't be nervous. Just know that and I'm sure most of the people in the audience are just thinking that it takes a certain amount of bravery, it takes a certain amount of oomph to want to get up there and to be able to answer the questions. Not only that, just to run for the office, you know. Anybody that is going to be able to give their time, their energy, their intelligence to a community or to a county, you know, you shouldn't be nervous about that. You know who you are, you know what you have to offer to the people, so just chill. You know, and just think that we're at a party. I'm serious. Just think that these are all your friends. Oh, yes, please.
You think, right?
She had actually given me vodka before this.
While we're filling in time, there's something else I want you to think about. George Bernard Shaw was a pretty major playwright, a political playwright, quite sardonic, quite humorous. But tonight is about this. George Bernard Shaw said, democracy is a device that ensures we shall be governed no better than we deserve. So we have to stand up for deserving, right?
Okay, anybody that has questions ready, I will hop right over to your chairs. Please take your time. You still have not had your full 5 minutes. You have more time. Thank you. Trick or treat. I'm a day late, darn it. Thank you. Walter, thank you, Kathy. Questions? Nothing from you? Okay. Thank you, my darling. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Thank you. This does not hurt as much as church when I pass the basket. This gentleman just reminded me of that.
Come a little later.
In this case, he's
Thank you. Questions? Hesitations? Reservations? Okay, good. Thanks. I'm very excited. I have a lot of questions. Okay, she put them in here. You have any? Okay. Any questions down there? Okay. All right. Oh, here you are. There. Thank you, honey. Okay.
Inquisitive minds want to know.
I'm really enjoying the party so far. Keep writing questions. I will make sure that I come around once again. We have to give Norm a little bit of time to sort through, good God, the questions. Thank you all for writing so many questions. That's wonderful. Okay, if anybody has their, and I won't confuse them, give them to Norm and he'll be going, here's a question. Apple pie, vote, and read your name. No. For the apple pie, I know it's delicious, you guys, so you're going to want to make sure. And I'll come back again for more apple pie tickets. Apple pie. No apple pie. You don't want to vote for the apple pie? Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
So you guys have to share this now.
Hi.
What if I don't need a help?
No, I didn't. Apple pie without cheese. Pie.
You're good. You're pretty good at that. You get the right tone.
No pie for you? Pie. Come on. Are you kidding me? You could win it and give it to me. I love pie. I can't. I'm more interested.
If the question leads to another question, we got all night, then you can hand the question back up to our lovely assistant here. Will come along and make sure that the question is collected.
Okay, perfect. Back to you, Norm.
I feel like I'm sorting out Christmas presents. This is pretty amazing. So I need to say this to you. I would like you to all be quiet. I mean that sincerely and gently, for one very specific reason. And that is, I want you to feel 2 minutes of silence, starting now. I get to talk even though you don't. Because 2 minutes is what these good people are allotted for answering these. We're at 21 seconds. I do this in my public speaking class all the time. The reason I do it is for you to realize how much of a volume a a container of 2 minutes is. So we're up to 37 seconds. And so, while we're still thinking about it, I want you to hear this because I hope this isn't the way tonight goes. This is one from one of our founders, John Adams. Our government must forever be a kind of war of about one half the people against the other. So says John Adams. That doesn't necessarily mean that. This is how I hope it goes, and this is from Thomas Jefferson. I never considered a difference of opinion in politics, in religion, in philosophy, as cause for withdrawing from a friend. That's how tonight should be. We're at 1 minute and 20 seconds. I think I've made the point. There's a lot that can go into that. It also can just be used up for no reason. So, lastly, my grandmother taught in a one-room schoolhouse for 2 years until she married and had a child, and then she was no longer allowed to do so because, of course, upright moral people don't have children. She called her children in with this bell. I begin my semester every semester by ringing this bell. I'm ringing this for you because, sorry for your hearing aids, if you go over the 2 minutes, I'm starting to ring it. I just want you to know. And it's not a pleasant sound. And if I have been asked to do this, if the questions, the answers are veering away from the questions, I'm supposed to push a little bit to make sure that you do. So, we shall start. What a stack. Who should I give a present to first? All councilmen, or those who want to be councilmen. What is your plan for preparing for board meetings? And we have Bob, Mattice, Ron, Panek, and Jackie Cavanaugh, if I'm correct. So, Bob, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure I'm going to need the microphone. I generally try and email the town clerk ahead of time to get the itinerary for the night, and I review the previous month's minutes and anything that's relevant to the meeting that night. There isn't a lot that goes on in between meetings. Any research that I may need to do also on topics.
Thank you, Mr. Panek.
Okay, again, same thing, get the agenda. One of the real handy sites that you may want to try for any subjects that have to do with the town is our insurance company. What is it? NYPIR.
Yeah.
They have a very nice site that, say if you have a zoning question, you can go look it up on there, and they give you what the current state law is, what the background is of why it's done that way, and can give some recommendations. So that's what I use for my primary research vehicle.
Thank you. Ms. Cavanaugh, Jackie?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. So I think it's really important when, being in public service and, being on the town board especially, to be resourceful. I think that's one of the major skills that you have to have. So, prior to the meetings, like the two gentlemen said before, research is really important. You don't want to show up to these meetings and it's the first time you've seen the agenda and the topics that are going to be discussed and decided upon. So, it's really important to, do your research ahead of time using, the town clerk is a wonderful resource, although Bolt's going to be, leaving us at the end of this year. I mean, there's other resources, and Walt will be sticking around hopefully to help with some of these things. So, utilizing the resources that are available here at the town and, other resources that Bob's already mentioned, who mentioned that? Ron mentioned. There's resources even at the library, where you can look up some of these in the internet, looking up, what some of the local laws are, and it's a continual process, being on these, in these public seats, because, you don't have all the answers, so, you continuously have to be doing your research, doing your due diligence, and being prepared for these meetings, because these are important topics that are gonna, be affecting everybody. You know, some of the topics may just be affecting a couple of people, but some of these things are pretty important issues that can affect everybody. So it's really important to come prepared, to know what people's opinions are in the town, so you're not just making the decision based on your opinion and your views, but what, you know, the people feel and want, because at the end of the day, you're representing a larger group of residents. So, so I think that's a really good question.
Okay, thank you. This is for candidate Michelle McEwen. I don't have a poker face. I'm always. Do you think that you'll be able to handle the computer programs needed as a town clerk?
Yes, I believe I could. I am proficient in Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Publisher, Excel, CoreView. And Kevin Andrews, the Deputy County Treasurer in Batavia, has offered to show me the Easy Tax system to help with the tax preparation and such with the, to do with the tax system for our town.
Thank you. Oh. This is for Steve Boldt. Hope I say this right, okay. Why did you pave Roanoke Road over Transit Road? Oh, this sounds like fun. Okay, so. But seriously, why did I?
No thanks. If you look back in time, we first widened Roanoke Road, and then a couple of years later, we widened Transit Road. So the Roanoke Road was next to be resurfaced, which we did, and hopefully next year we will do Transit Road. I mean, it's just our progressive plan to do things, and whether it's Roanoke, whatever, it's just the way it works.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. I'm trying to just give you these out for both town clerks, so you each get the time. What changes would you implement if elected? What specific changes would you implement?
I don't need a microphone.
Okay.
I'm used to the courtroom.
Go for it.
There's a few changes I'd like to do some updates, like start with the credit card machine. I think more and more we're finding today.
Can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Then I will use a microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
I think I'd like to implement the credit card machine. As more and more people are shopping, they carry less cash on them, especially during tax season. So that would be an update. I'd like to update the phone system. We've already started looking at a few things. Jack started it, so I'd like to help finish it. And then if anybody doesn't know, that's Walter's nickname. I just think the grant writing is a big thing, because I've already practiced it. I'd like to carry that over to that hall. We've gotten quite a bit with that. Security, our court security, our town security, and our cameras outside, excuse me. So.
Michelle?
As I've been out campaigning, I've heard a lot of people say that, you know, they always think about going to the town hall on a Wednesday when it's closed, and I would like to open the office on Wednesdays.
Thank you. For Andrew Young. What is the legislature's position on the prospect of a new county jail?
Oh boy.
That's a good question. Our intentions are to build a new jail, because we're going to need to build a new jail. New York State has been kind to us in regard to the accommodations we have now for prisoners, in terms of allowing us to have special variances and whatnot, but their patience for that is growing thin. So they have let us know and put us on notice that the facility that we have now is not going to work. We have a couple of different problems there. One, not the least of which, is we don't have anywhere to house female inmates. So we are transporting female inmates to other jails, and those other jails are very far away, in some cases 2, 3, 4 hours, and we're taking a deputy off the road in some cases. We did address that last year in the budget. We added some corrections officers to take the brunt of that. But so somebody is being paid to take those people to all kinds of places across the state, because we don't have an accommodation for them. Whether or not we can address that, or how we're going to address that, is yet to be seen. But our initial estimates for a new jail are $42 million. I got a feeling it's going to be more than that. So it's something we're working on right now. The study was just done and we're looking for the results of that soon in regard to exactly what we need to build and how we need to build it based on our needs and the state's requirements. So a lot needs to be told still, but it's something that's in our future that we need to think about paying for sure.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for, I haven't rung the bell yet. And I also want you to know I'm not disrespecting you by not giving you lots of eye contact, but that's another public speaking thing. The more you're looking at the folks who are answering, I appreciate that you're giving them the eye contact. That's important. There's a follow-up question for you on this. I'm not sure if this would be discussed by legislature or more departmental an issue, but the question is, what is county's position on public defender and counsel at arraignment?
Well, the county's position is that it costs us a lot of, I didn't do that. My position is that that costs us a lot of money. I don't think we would take steps towards doing that unless we were required to, which we may very well be required to by New York State. If past practice is any indication, New York State will make us do that and will give us no money and no funding to do it. So it could be a problem for us from a budgetary perspective. And just as another point in regard to that, we have about $150 million budget. The state mandates all but $22 million worth of that budget. So when we do a budget of $150 million, we really only have say over about $22 million of that budget from a county perspective. Everything else is required from the state. And then even of the $22 million, about $13 million of that goes to the Sheriff's Department. So there really is, which we need to have public safety, there really is not much room for, and when we try to cut, you know, it seems like it's quite drastic, but it's because we're dealing with a small percentage of the budget that we really have much say over whatsoever.
Julie, what makes you right for the town clerk job?
Well, I've worked for the town for 15 years as a court clerk, so I'm a little familiar with how things are processed, at least in that office. And I love this town. My family's been raised here, and dealing with the thruway, got 4 miles that run through our town, and I really like just to deal with some of my local people that I see that town, how the town business has grown as well.
Thank you. Right. I'll save that because I've got to figure out who it goes to. All right, this is for those who are running for council. Government's job is to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Can I trust you that through zoning laws, I will keep my long-earned and paid-for Stafford property safe from industrial encroachment that has only a 20-year expected lifespan? Please explain how you see the need to help outsiders profit on our backs. So really, I think there are 2 questions there, and one is more loaded than the other, but they both need to be addressed. Can I trust that you, through the zoning laws, will keep my long-earned and paid-for Stafford property safe from industrial encroachment that has only a 20-year expected lifespan? So that's for those of you on the council, or running for council. So, Jackie, let's start with you.
Jackie.
I think that's a great question, and I think that that's probably something a lot of residents are concerned with, especially landowners. And, you know, let's be honest, the biggest industry in Stafford is farming land and land ownership. So I think that it's important that people feel like their land is safe and that, you know, it'll be there to pass on to their kids. And, you know, it's kind of like a legacy, and they're not making any more of it either, right? So I get the ideas behind it and the ideology behind it. And I think it is important to preserve, you know, what we have here, and the community and you know, the historical, you know, the historical parts to it that we have, the agricultural parts to it. So my belief is that, you know, nobody's land is going to be coming and taken over by, you know, outside corporations. I think, in fact, it's important that we always, you know, as town residents feel as though we have control over our land. And, you know, there's been a lot of issues kind of at the forefront recently, and I'm not going to get into it because it would kind of get off topic. But, things like, solar panels and windmills and all of that, companies coming in and offering, a sizable amount of money to take over some land ownership, and it can be enticing for some people. So I think our job on the town board and the local legislation is to, protect the interest of everybody else. People that may not have a say in these decisions, but, these decisions are ultimately going to affect, everybody. So, preserving property costs, preserving your land, preserving, the integrity of the land, those are all important things. So, so I'm with you on that question and the importance of that for sure.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to Michelle. No, I'm sorry, Ron.
Okay. This isn't our first go-around with land use. If you go back about 9 years ago, we had the issue with the wind turbines. And what did we learn from that? We learned, number one, that a broad-based committee looking at all the aspects is very helpful. And from there, we used that again when it came to fracking, and again when it came to solar panels. So first things first, use that strategy. What did we also learn about with the wind turbines? We learned that the scope of a project can be so large that it can affect your neighbors. Take a good example. The setbacks that were being offered were setbacks to buildings. And the reason why that was done, because if you did a setback from a property line or a road, there was no place in Stafford you could put one of these. So again, you have to look carefully at what are people asking for. And what they were really asking for at that time was, we want to use your land for our setback. And by the way, we're going to take your ability to build away from you by having that setback. So we missed quite a bullet there. Then came along fracking. And what did we learn about that? Well, one of the important things we learned is that although New York State wanted to ban fracking, New York State accepted the fracking fluid into our landfills. So the law was emphasized to make sure that we're protected from that hole in the system. Now we've got another one coming along, and that's with the solar panels.
We're just about, you got 10 seconds.
Okay, we have a committee on that, and we'll be getting the answer shortly on that.
Thank you. Okay. And then we'll go over.
Again, I don't think I'm going to need this, but our zoning code is fairly tight, but it's not infallible. We're looking at it, especially for solar now. We looked at it very hard for the hydrofracking. We actually got an expert attorney that helped us write the code to take care of the issues, and we got through that. But you also need to know what you're looking at. We brought a right to farm law out of the blue a few years ago, and it sounded like, well, right to farm, that's a great idea, until you really know what you're looking at. The right to farm was the right to farm energy as well as crops. That was an end around to the zoning code. That law obviously didn't go anywhere, so you need to know what you're looking at as a whole, not just what it looks like. So we need to look at everything carefully before we make any decisions.
Okay, thank you. Oh. Michelle, are you running as an independent?
I formed my own party called Michelle for Clerk, and so I am independent of any party.
Okay. Points for sure. And to the point, and pithy, and good for you. Jackie, according to your ad in the Leroy Penny Saver, using the word change, would you please define what you mean by change?
So change, when I was referencing change, I mean, you know, a lot of different things, bringing, you know, a fresh new perspective to, you know, the current dynamics of the town board. You know, there's been some people that have been long-standing on there, and while that's a good thing, I think change is also a good thing, to bring on some new ideas, some innovative ideas, and kind of shake things up a little bit. So I meant change in that perspective. I also meant, you know, coming from, you know, outside from, you know, Syracuse and another community. You know, some of the things that I've experienced there, some of my life experience, I could bring on to this role as well. So some new ideas, some innovative changes. You know, I'm a female as well, so I think that would be a welcome change. You know, a female voice, some female perspectives and approach to things, and you know, some young ideas. I mean, I'm fairly younger, so so a lot of these things, those are a lot of the things that I was referencing when I meant change. And not saying that you guys are old, but with age comes wisdom. We add that in there too. But you know, innovative and new ideas, and just a change from what's existed for the last several years. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. There's one that just grabbed my, here we are. It says board candidates, so I assume that means town council candidates. Driving through Stafford in Emery Park, there's a sign posted that says, "No dogs." If elected, would you be willing to change that law, allowing dogs to go into the park without owners using the pooper scooper rule? Sorry, with owners.
I'm sorry, I was looking over your shoulder.
That's okay, it's a good thing, I could have messed that up terribly. If elected, would you be willing to change the law allowing dogs to go into the park with owners using the pooper scooper rule? So let's be fair, let's start with Bob this time.
I'm not opposed to it, we just have to check into the legalities of liability. If somebody, you know, if I take my dog into the park and it bites somebody, is the town liable for that? I live across from the park, directly across from the park, and there's dogs in there all the time, and I know there's not supposed to be. I catch grief for not taking our dogs over there, but it's currently the rule, and I live by it because that's the rule, but I would not be opposed to it.
Okay, Ron, let's go with you.
Same, you gotta look at the liability issue, and I think you'll probably have to have it as a separate area.
And Michelle? I'm sorry, Julie? Jackie?
I just want to say I'm actually Bob's neighbor, and I see his dogs are very cute little dogs. In fact, before I even knew it was his house, I always admired those cute little dogs. Every time I drove by, they kind of chase your car as you're going by. So I live right by the park too. I don't have any dogs, but I'm a big dog lover. So I mean, and these are the kind of issues, right, that affect us as residents. So that's, I mean, it's an important question, and I think that the two gentlemen made some really good points. I mean, we have to consider the liability to the town, you know, safety issues. I mean, pooper scooper's a good point too. I mean, we don't want to have kids stepping in poop and getting it on their hands and all of that. So, so I mean, you have to think these things through and you know, kind of get a consensus from what other people are thinking. And again, like going back to my first answer, it's just important to know where everybody stands. You know, from a group standpoint and from the town. So it's not just my view. You have to think about it from the legality and the safety issues, but then, you know, what the majority of people are thinking and feeling too.
Thank you. Oh, Steve, you're going to have fun with this. Can you name 2 reasons why we should pull the lever down for you running unopposed? I'm not we, I don't vote here. That's what I'm saying.
If you look through the years, the 12 years that I've been highway superintendent, I've been fiscal responsible. You know, we've updated machinery, we've paved a lot of roads, we've always been within budget. The second thing is currently, right now, we have a great staff at the garage. We have a good crew. I'd like to keep this going as long as we can. And, status quo, I would say. And I'll say if anybody has any ideas or questions, please get a hold of me. I'm willing to sit down with you and, we'll come up with some ideas. We'll see what we can do.
Well, he's looking for questions. Does anybody else have any other questions?
So collective if you do.
Thank you.
Julie, this is for you. Does Mrs. Scheuerlein intend to keep her job if she wins the town clerk job?
When I win the town clerk job, I plan on just helping. I talked about maybe bringing somebody on to train them, and if need be. Our court has expanded, and he actually made the comment to me not too long ago that he didn't realize how this business would be evolving. At least the court. 4 miles of throughway generate a lot of business for this town. We can bring in I've handled up to almost $1 million. 2/3 of that does go to the state, but it enables us to keep our tax base down as well. And as you see our addition out here, I don't know if that's going to be another part of another question. We're actually building a room for Terry, our court clerk, who sits at the bench, the judges' chambers, and so the attorneys have a meeting room with their client, or if an inmate's brought here. Because right now, other offices have been sharing their offices when they weren't here, and we really don't want that happening. So, just, I think that's it. That's not me? Oh, okay, I think that's it.
Yep, thank you. And again, all of you, thank you for being, from my viewpoint as a moderator and an outsider, you're being specific to the questions, much more so than larger politics sometimes get. Okay. Mr. Mattice, as an incumbent, please tell us what you like about being on the town board.
I find it pretty rewarding being on the town board. People come to my house all the time with concerns, questions. I get calls from the public because I put my phone number out there. It's on the website, it's on my flyers. People know where I live. My house is pretty accessible. I enjoy public service. I started public service at 16 in the fire department. I continued on to the sheriff's department. I really enjoy being involved in what's going on in Stafford. I've lived here almost my entire life.
This is for the council folk again. Any council person, so all three. What can be done to improve the appearance of Main Street? So, to be fair this time, let's start with Ron.
Okay. There is a limit to what we can do with the Main Street because that is a state highway. So we have to keep that in mind as we're doing it. The tools we have, when you look at what tools does the town have, you have your zoning ordinance, and that's we have a hamlet area here. So the first thing we can do is make sure that all the buildings comply to what we want for a hamlet area. Again, with it being a state highway, there aren't a lot more things we can do besides enforce our zoning law and lobby the state to keep the highway neat and paved.
Julie, this is another one for you. Oh, I'm sorry.
I really didn't have a lot to add.
I beg pardon, no, but please add this.
The only thing I can think of that we're working on now, and this is a problem that you can all see looking out that window, is we're trying to get that property next to us in compliance, and that's becoming a litigious nightmare. But we're being careful to get it into compliance, and that's pretty much the only thing on Route 5 I can think that really needs to be fixed. Other than that, any zombie properties, we mow it, put it on the taxes. But I think Main Street looks pretty tight for what we can do with it.
And I do apologize.
That's okay.
And
Yeah,
The only thing I would add is, what came to my mind too was that house on the corner. It's pretty much an eyesore. And I know that there's been a lot of steps taken from the current town board members to, the current town clerk and, everybody that's part of the town here to take the necessary steps to rectifying that and holding the owner accountable. So, I'm confident that will continue, and there is a lot of red tape and a lot of legalities that go on that most people aren't even aware of. You see these things and you think, why isn't somebody doing something about that? But in reality, it's not as easy as all that, and these two men kind of already attested to some of those things. And I'll only add too that, I think it's really important to be resourceful when, approaching things like these topics. And I consider myself very resourceful. I'm in HR, so, human resources, I'm naturally resourceful. So, looking at all the resources that you have available and what capabilities you have, and then thinking outside the box is also important when approaching these things, because there's already been attempts. If you can think of something maybe that hasn't been approached yet, that's another way of kind of thinking, going to
For the town clerk candidates, Michelle and Julie. Michelle, will start with you. The Town of Stafford website could be a wonderful and informative tool for residents and others. If elected, will you update the site, which is sorely needed, and maintain it and keep it current?
Yes, I would like to make some changes to some of it, and keep it updated and keep the minutes for the board meetings and other necessary things that should be on here.
Well, once again, Walt installed it. He found a lady to help him present it at this point. But as the town grows and changes seem to happen, he tends to work with it a little bit. So as we progress in this town, that's what will also be part of that job. So I wouldn't have any, even suggestions. If somebody wants to call and put something, everybody accesses their computers nowadays, whether it be on their phone or their TV or, So yes, it definitely, thank you, Jeff, for installing it.
Am I doing all right?
You're doing good.
Am I doing all right? They're doing all right. Thank you very much. Well, that's good. I'm not. I don't need to ring that. They're doing fine.
No, I said both.
Oh, well, Andrew's not asleep. He's waiting for his toast. All right. Andrew, do you feel that all of those incarcerated need to be jailed, or could the prisoners be on ankle bracelets so we aren't paying to house and feed said prisoners?
Yes, we take a lot of steps in this county to avoid incarceration. And one of the things we've seen recently is, as Chuck Zambito being our new county attorney, he's been able to work with us in regard to finding other opportunities in regard to not incarcerating people. So yes, I agree with that. I think we do it in many cases. There are certainly cases where we cannot do it. I would think our record on that is very good, and we have things in place right now to try to avoid incarceration. I think to the degree that it needs to be, it doesn't overdo it and it doesn't underdo it. I think we really do a lot of that. Doesn't mean we don't have a jail full of people, but it does mean that we do take a lot of steps to make sure that we can have people out there that we're not paying for. Because when we pay for them, we pay for their medical, we pay for their dentistry, we pay for the cost of housing an inmate is an unbelievable burden on this county, and it's not something we can avoid, but it's certainly something that I believe the county does a really good job at trying to avoid.
Thank you. But hang on to the mic.
Okay. You always give me 2 in a row.
Well, I'm giving all of you 1 in a row. Because this is for all of you. So we'll just go down the line. Habitat, Rotary, Kiwanis, Fire Department, Historical Society, the VA, and so on. Do any of you do any volunteer work?
Most of my volunteer work has been centered around my kids and other kids. I coach every sport. I'm heavily involved in the Business Education Alliance, which tries to bring business and the schools together. So I've been a president of that group, and I'm a current board member for about 20 years now. That's where I spend a lot of my time. Again, between coaching, Business Education Alliance, and then what I've found is, having taken this job as county legislator 4 years ago, it has bitten into a lot of the time that I had to do those volunteer things. So someday I'll get back to them. But
Well, I belong to this historical society, and that has been a lot of fun, just getting to know these ladies, learning, they just had an auction that was awesome. And I also, I have a couple friends that are really sick, so there's a group of us that do fundraisers for them to help them in this time that they need help. So, and I work full time. I did a lot when the kids were young as far as volunteer work with sports and whatnot. So, thank you.
Okay, Historical Society and Garden Club, and I went through the training to be a master gardener. Now, all three of those are suffering because I work a full-time job in Clifton Springs, and I have a Christmas tree farm on Thwing Road that keeps me busy both spring and fall. But if as time goes on and I'm able to retire, those will be my three favorites.
Yeah, also my volunteering is suffering greatly at the hands of two jobs. But I've been a volunteer fireman with Stafford. I'm a life member. I joined at the age of 16 and remain a life member now. I was an EMT, the Leroy Volunteer Ambulance, for 15 years, putting in 25,000 hours there. I got the pin for that one. Red Cross, I volunteered as a CPR AD instructor for 10 years. I coached Leroy football and Leroy baseball for 3 years. My little guy was in that. Then thankfully he took up karate, and I can't teach karate. So I became a shift supervisor at the county jail, which takes him a lot of time, and the town board takes up the rest, and running him back and forth to karate is pretty much it for now. But the fire department will see me again in about 6 months when I can retire from the sheriff's department.
So until the Stafford Ladies Auxiliary disbanded a few years ago, I was an active member in that, and I held the secretarial position and took the notes for those meetings. I also was volunteering on the board of directors for the Leroy Christian Community Project up in Leroy, and I served on that until about 2012, but they also disbanded. And I currently am very active in my local church in Leroy and serve on a lot of different capacities there.
So I, along with everybody else, think it's really important to volunteer and to give back to your community. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why, I decided to run for office, or for, this seat, because I think it's really important to get involved and to give back and to, build roots in your community. So some of the organizations that were mentioned, I'm not affiliated with as of yet, but I've volunteered for an organization called Vera House back in Syracuse. I'm involved with United Way through my company, and they support a lot of local organizations, including the food bank, home hospice, GCCA. It's a drug rehabilitation center out by Albion. So there's a number of organizations that they support and they fund. Like everybody else, this is one of my ways of giving back to the community and getting involved in public service. And it's definitely been taking up a lot of my time. So I can kind of echo everybody else in saying that there's not a lot of extra time during campaigning for too much else, but it is important. So that's a good question.
Thank you. I currently serve on the Genesee County Farmland Protection Board. Also sit on the Genesee County Ag Society Board, commonly the Fairgrounds, and social member for the fire department. Plus, I was Morganville Cemetery sexton and president of that, marking out graves and selling graves. So, kind of retired from that position after 20 years. So,
Thank you all. I would say this. I've been at, now if any of you are school board members, I apologize, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but I've been to school boards meetings where nobody in the board ever once gave eye contact to the audience, and you were talking to people, and that's cool, keep it up. Because this is a gauntlet of questions. This is for Ron. What have been your more successful accomplishments while on the board? As specifically as you can.
All right, let's see. Let's go back to, again, the first term when we had the wind turbines. I pulled together the law based on the Oakfield and Batavia law and presented it to the board. We had it reviewed by the attorney with very few changes, so that saved quite a bit of money there. We've had, from there we've had quite a few of the items that have to come in front of the board, recreational, what would you call it? When somebody applies to have a recreational facility, they have to come in front of the board, so we've done that. We had the hydrofracking that we got through. Right now, I think for the personnel, we've got where Bob Mullen, Bob Mattice are working on the contract. I'm redoing the, well, not redoing, actually authoring the employee manual for the town. So just finishing that up. Quite a few items.
Okay, thank you. And this, follow it up, it's for Bob. What do you think are the more successful decisions you have made as a constable?
I think the two most important ones were getting the hydrofracking statute passed, the zoning cleaned up where they couldn't haul hydrofracking waste and dump it in our town. Just because it says it's not hazardous, that's only because the hydrofracking companies don't have to call it that. If you and I have it, it'll kill you. It's okay for them. We got that taken care of. I also got, we got new staff in the recreation department. We were having a little problem with our rec people, and it was killing our numbers. The kids weren't coming back. We hired new rec staff, new rec director, new rec director 1 year. Next year we got new rec supervisors, and our program's coming back to what it should be. It's the one thing that gives our kids in town identity is Stafford residents. They all go to different schools, but they can all come to Stafford.
I am listening to, I'm just continuing to sort these because I do notice some themes emerging, and when I can put these questions together, I will. This is for Michelle and Julie. So Julie, I'll start with you. What improvements would you make to the town clerk's office? And please discuss why.
Well, the office itself is very suitable for the business that they handle in the office. As far as the filing, there's plenty of filing space. I don't think they changed that. I mean, obviously, when Walt leaves, he's taking his painting, so I think they'd have to get something else on the wall. But it's it serves a really good purpose when you're working in it. And you can get up and go to the desk. You can work on that top table when you're doing tax bills. And he's got a view from where his desk is of anybody coming into the building. And his cameras are right there that catch the surrounding part of the building. So it's where everything is seated in the office. It was just painted a couple years ago, so the painting is fine. Like I said, I'd probably just be decorating.
Thank you.
I think Walt's done a great job of running the town hall for 12 years, and we all appreciate his service. And besides the being open like on Wednesdays, like I said before, would be helpful for those in the community that I've heard from. I don't really see any policy changes or anything like that.
For Andrew Young, would you please be willing to suggest to the Department of Transportation that the making Route 5 of the second lane westbound be a turning lane only is a seriously inconvenient flaw for normal traffic.
I agree, 100%. And yes, I will. Again, that's the state. It probably doesn't have much to do with the county, but we could certainly make our voices known as county legislature that we don't like it and that we'd like it to be changed for sure.
Okay, this is for the three council folks, and so before I read it, just to try to keep juggling it with you, we'll start with Jackie and then go to Ron and then Bob. When public water came through 15 years ago, the stone walking path was removed. Is there any thought of bringing it back or putting in a sidewalk to keep kids or adults off the road?
That's the first that I've heard of that issue because I wasn't around when that decision was made. I know that there is a lot of, current issues and debates and things in the works as far as public water system. And Bob Clement was good enough to, spend over an hour with me at his kitchen table discussing some of these issues, including this one. So I'm familiar with, the status and what it takes to get some of these things accomplished. But I mean, I think that that's a good idea, putting in, anything, any infrastructure into the town, whether it be a walkway or something that, could promote safety and keep people off the road. I think that that sounds like a good idea in theory. We just would have to look at, zoning laws, the cost of it, and the practicality of it. But I think that's definitely, a doable and surmountable request.
Yeah. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but that really's got to come out of the residents of the Hamlet area. There are a few places we could put sidewalks if they're desired, but normally that's something that the homeowner has to maintain. So we're not, sidewalks have not been a real popular subject. Perhaps there's one or two people that are looking for them, but I've got over 12 years, I've gotten about 0 feedback for a desire for sidewalks.
I'm going to interrupt you on this just because this might help. This says Emery Park to Stafford Painters.
That's where they were looking for sidewalks.
All the way down.
Yeah, so that would be all the way across town.
Okay.
All right. We do have a path from the park to right over here that goes behind the buildings, and that's an interesting installation that we did. So there is a path there, but again, there's two things with it. Once you get it, you got to maintain it, and there hasn't been a lot of people jumping forward to want to maintain those.
I grew up, we had the stone sidewalk in front of our house, and it was about wide enough for your bike, and it was mostly grown over. And for Emery Park purposes, it was on the wrong side of the street. It was on the south side of the street, the park's on the north. And it only went from about, the bridge to the old town barns up here that are vacant. So they were on the wrong side of the street, they were insufficient. The one that actually comes down behind 5 is on the right side, behind the houses. That's how the kids get down to the recreation swimming program with the Stafford Country Club. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing them, but not on the wrong side for people to get to the park. If you're going to put it to the park, don't get across from the park. So, and again, it's a cost thing. It would be super expensive. Worthwhile, maybe, but very expensive.
All right, I'm not throwing questions away. When I say a question essentially repeated, I'm going to try not to do that to you, and that is a judgment call that I have to make. One more for all three of you, and so you've got the mic, so we'll start with you, Bob. As it relates to the rights of people who may live adjacent to an industrial solar installation, discuss protecting the next door neighbors. For all three of you.
I'm not sure we're to the point where we can really discuss that. We're still digging into solar. I know there are many problems with it. I know I wouldn't want one facing my house. I wouldn't expect anybody else want one facing their house. There are places for them. We're just not sure where they are yet. We're still working on it. I wouldn't want them to encroach on anybody else's property, as I wouldn't expect anybody to want them to encroach on mine.
Okay. I think we know from doing other projects, there are some basics. You're going to want to have some type of buffer zone. You're going to want to have some type of bonding to guarantee removal. The solar panels probably aren't as intrusive as the wind turbines would have been, but we're going to have to handle them carefully. So we'll wait for the committee to give their report on it. We've gone to the presentations they've had. It's a reasonably interesting subject, so that's worked out well now for how many different projects. We'll wait for the report and work on what the recommendations are from the citizen committee.
So this is a really good question, and it kind of leads me into explaining my approach to a lot of issues, this being one of them. So I think it's really important in holding a seat in public office that you're not just approaching decisions and situations based on the people that are going to be directly impacted, people that are directly part of the negotiation or the decision making, but how it's going to affect the entire town, the people that don't have a stake in the decision or the negotiation. This is a perfect example, how it's going to affect the neighbor, how it's going to affect maybe their property values. And Dennis Vacco, who Sandy invited in to kind of explain some of the gotchas and the ins and outs of these contracts, kind of highlighted the way some of these things can affect other residents.
It's not you.
Okay, so this is a really good question. I think it's important to protect, the property values, the integrity of people's properties, and how it's going to affect everybody as a whole. So that would be my approach to not only this question, but a lot of issues that would be brought to the board.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Young. Okay, are we ready for the gauntlet? Because all of these are solar questions. I'm standing up so I can be a target. Because clearly this is very important. So what I'm going to do is read these questions. Not to race through them, but to try to have, because some of these are repeated, some of them are interrelated. I'm going to read the questions, and for the three council persons, I would ask you, so Julie, you'll start. Jackie. Julie, I'm sorry.
That's
Jackie, let's start. Okay, that's all right. So, if you need me to stop, you'll tell me. With the Sun Common New York company, Solar Energy, being named the #1 company in the annual Rochester Chamber of Commerce fastest growing top 100 area companies, do you see a future for solar energy in the town of Stafford? In July 2015, New York State legalized community solar farms through Reforming Energy Initiative, set statewide goals to generate 50% of its energy via renewable energy by 2030. With well-paying jobs, lower energy, lower taxes, do you see Stafford involved in this initiative? Will solar benefit me? I'm not a landowner. Who will it benefit? I think I'm going to leave, we'll go with that for now. So Jackie.
So the first question I think was, do I see a place for solar panels in the town of Stafford? And I think that there is a place maybe on private property, where there isn't agricultural land. I think that we need to preserve, the agricultural land and farmable land. I also really tend to think that they don't have as much of a place here as they would maybe in other parts of the country, right? That are getting more sun, that aren't, that don't have farmable land. And, you know, based on the things that I've heard and the statistics that I've learned and in attending a lot of meetings and lectures on this, I don't think that the payoff is really worth, you know, what goes into it and what you would, the cost benefit essentially to landowners. So I tend to think that there isn't a place for them here, maybe on residential homes. But, you know, when it comes to farmland and commercial use and inviting people in to take over your land ownership and the leasing contracts, I don't think that it has a place here. The other question is, how will it benefit me if I'm not a landowner? Well, I mean, it could help lower your electricity bill, you know, take you off the grid, so to speak. But also, I encourage you to think about, you know, how long that actually will take. I mean, it's not always as easy and straightforward as you might think. You know, it may take a long period of time for you to actually see those returns on your energy bills and energy savings. And also to just really research and figure out, you know, what the end result is, what the cost benefit is for you, because it's not all what it seems, you know, and we've kind of learned that here with the different committees that, you know, are good enough to do research for the greater good. And the last question?
Well, you've covered it.
Okay, perfect.
So, yeah. I had to rescue you somehow.
Okay. I'm not 100% sure how I stand on large-scale solar. Solar itself, local, you want to put solar panels up on your roof, no problem. I think they're okay. I had a friend who had them in Legislator. All they did was leak, he took them off. If you want to put them on your roof, more power to you, I'm not. Large-scale solar, I don't think we should take up any valuable farmland that's good cropland to put solar panels up. Now, if you've got some area that's not suitable for farming, maybe. I'm not sure if you're going to benefit as much as they claim you're going to benefit from it. And if you're not a landowner, I don't understand how you would benefit from solar whatsoever, because you're not going to see any savings to yourself. The landowner might, the solar company might, from the incentives they're going to get from the state. But, you know, if my neighbor puts up solar and I don't own the land, I'm not getting anything out of it other than looking at the solar panels.
Both with wind and solar, it'll be very interesting if the state made it, rather than being how much power is being generated by these, but have it rather how much coal or gas generation is being displaced. Because what you have going on is basically they're mining the subsidies. And what it's doing for our grid is quite minimal. All right, but now how does that affect Stafford? Because some of the numbers they're talking about are pretty generous. Number one, we have to look at not knocking out good farmland like everybody's covered. We may need to go to have overlaps or grids on our comprehensive plan to make sure we have those protected. The one thing that we did with wind turbines that I think is especially effective is no pilots. You look at Wyoming County, they did where the wind companies came in, they did pilots, and they only paid the town. Consequently, the county and schools are getting none of it. How can you have millions of dollars worth of development and have the schools and the counties going broke? So any of these new energy gimmicks that are coming in, you pay your taxes on them. We didn't give the Red Osier a pilot when new owners took over. We don't give our farmers any type of pilot when they build a new building. We're not going to give these guys a pilot for if they bring something in. So far, none of them build without some type of tax break. So you can cut it off right there.
Thank you. Are these the rest of this? Yes, these are all solar questions.
I think you can just read them.
I'm going to read them, and is it fair to all of you? I read all of them, and they say what they have to say.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm concerned about my property values if industrial solar is approved here. I've heard the assessors say there will be no loss. This doesn't make sense to me. Will you consider finding what has actually happened in other states? If I find solar near me, I'll probably move. I don't want to lose dollars. Please discuss. How will solar farm encroachment in Stafford benefit my grandchildren if today a 65-year-old signs a land lease for 20 years? Will larger taxes be paid? Will electric be cheaper? Who will grow the potatoes to feed the family? What are your views on solar? Discuss your understanding of large-scale industrial solar electric plants here in Stafford and the intended consequences that may issue as a result. Please explain the difference between large-scale solar electric plants and residential rooftop solar. I think we've gotten there. After the experience of the solar farms in the Virgin Islands, after the hurricanes, how do you feel about solar farms and their vulnerability by citing them here? I think that's it. Let's start with you, sir, since you still have the mic.
All right, in general, on solar panels, let's look at the first thing. This area, whether at the state or the county or the local level, is depending an awful lot on solar panels being a viable business and not changing designs where things that are set up are not a viable business. Now, at the state level, you've got the Buffalo Billion, where they put up a plant that's supposed to make solar panels. At the county level, you have our industrial park that is still looking for funding on the solar panel manufacturer. What's the name of the people?
Squared B,
3 Squared or something like that. So that's up in the air. And then you have, at the local level, you have where these farms are starting to look for siting areas to put their solar panels. I think it's a risky strategy at all levels. One small change of technology, one Chinese scientist that says, you know what, if you do this, it's going to increase the output, and all of this stuff gets wiped out. I wouldn't put as much into, we're putting too many eggs in the solar basket in the western New York area. So that's my observation on solar.
Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that any better, actually. Yeah.
Well, try.
Yeah, what he said.
Okay.
That's a good one. Well, I mean, I think a lot of it's been said already, the difference between residential benefits and the commercial benefits. I mean, they're two completely different, two completely different animals, I guess you could say. I attended the lecture that Dennis Vacco was good enough to host here, and he brought up a lot of good points. There are some benefits to it. There's some negative impacts on both tax implications and property values. I think the larger, on one scale, the negative impacts outweigh the positive implications. Property values have already been referenced. I think that, whether it's, you have solar panels on your own property. I know when I see a house up for sale and they have solar panels on them, they're not going to sell as quickly. And I think the same thing's going to go for if there's solar panels across the street from you. It's just the way it goes. I don't really think that there is a place for them here. I think that there is still a lot to be seen when the mandate ends in February, and we kind of look at this a little bit in more detail. But it's definitely a hot topic issue that we need to continue to work on and delve into, and continue to get your feedback on what you guys think, because at the end of the day, what you guys think and your feelings on these issues really do matter.
Thank you very much, because I'm trying to keep this as specific as possible, address what people need, and I'm sure they'll let me know. Yeah, and we have essentially 15 minutes now. I'm going to try to get through these. So, Steve, a string of questions for you. So I'll let this go a little, I will make an exception. Steve, as a driver in a FOBO, forward only, blacktop only, I drive an automatic. As a woman, is there a job in the highway department for me? I'm going to ask the next one. There was some white fluffy stuff in the air a couple of days ago. Are we ready, Steve? What do you feel was your best accomplishment with the highway department, and what do you wish to continue in the next session? And would you work to get a traffic light at Route 5 and 237, even though it's a state highway? Do we need an advocate for that busy intersection? So.
All right. Most all the vehicles we have now are all automatic transmissions. We still have a bunch of stick shift transmissions, and there are women that drive stick shift semis across country, so I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with it. So are we ready? All 3 trucks are ready. We still have 1 truck apart, so we can continue doing, you know, ditch work and tree work. We'll put that together when we get closer to, we need them to be ready. Street light, that's a state issue. Much like the speed limit reductions, that's a tough time.
May I ask you a question? Do you have any voice, because it's a state issue, do they ask people in the position of highway superintendent what they think?
They usually take it right out of our hands. We can request it to the state. They usually look at it and they say, how many people have died, how many accidents, and if you don't match that number, you're good luck, you're done.
Good man. Okay, thank you.
Hope that's it.
You should be so lucky. No, we're gonna. Julie, these are all for you. Now, a couple of these are the same. I'm not sure that I agree as moderator, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm going to read a bunch of them. Are you going to be working in both offices? I'm not sure you answered the earlier question clearly. This person says, as town clerk, will you keep both positions, town court clerk and town clerk, if you do win the town clerk position? And this says you advertised that you graduated from GCC with an AA degree. What was the degree?
Yeah, that was a mistake. I didn't catch that extra A. I was supposed to be an S. I graduated my associate in psychology. If they needed help over here, I probably would help on a day off. I do plan on committing to the town hall or town position and working there full time. So one of the judges does. I do want to tell you, I've been fortunate enough to work for great bosses, all my judges, and my town supervisor, and my town board members, because I work for you too. I really feel like I have to learn the job. And I've been offered assistance in teaching, and like I said, I could be an asset, because I could help out on the night that there is court, if need be, because of my knowledge of working in the court, for 15 years. So, did I answer that?
I think so.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hang on to it.
Oh,
Yeah, here's more. Might as well, I got the town clerk's job pays about the same as court clerk. Why the change from an appointed to an elected position? I actually think why the change? Why do you want the change?
because I love my town. I think I love the town, people in the town as well. And because I've been here for 15 years, I just thought I'd cross the hall and stick my finger in another little pot.
That's not me. Sorry, that's not you. It's not that. Anything else you wanted to say?
No, it's just the huge opportunity, like I said, for the bosses I've worked for. I've been very fortunate. And crossing the hall, I'd be working for all of you a little bit more directly.
Okay, thank you. I've got more, but I'll give you a break. This is from Ron. Trying to put these together again. Can we be sure that town citizens are considered first for all town jobs? Will you bring job account back to Stafford? Do you envision the town farming out our bookkeeping?
Okay. We normally, with all jobs, ask if the person is a town resident. One of the things going through the handbook that we're putting together, in there, it actually lays out what the rules would be for having a resident in the jobs, how they're given first preference. I think we've actually gotten better in the number of people who are interested in town jobs, where now we have more residents in jobs than we did when I first came here. It is true we have we're sharing services with Batavia on the financial clerk. That's going to be a tough one to break because it is extremely reasonable. For what we're getting for the money is excellent. So shared services is winning out a little bit over the preference for a independent clerk. Now, if it reaches a point where we have to have an independent clerk, then yes, we always give preference to somebody from the town.
Are you up for another one?
Sure.
Okay. Would you support a tipping fee for the town from the Hanson quarry on every truck, town, county, or commercial, leaving Hanson's? I'm concerned that the quarry doesn't contribute enough to our town. That sounds like a volatile question, but
I don't think we have, as a town, the ability to do that. But from, I guess what we have to do is make sure Ann has the appraisal at the right level. Make sure Hanson's all over the state. Matter of fact, I saw Hanson trucks when we were in Europe just a couple of months ago. So there are other spots we can check to see if they're paying their fair share. But yeah, I think a tipping fee might be out of what we can do as a town. But that would be easy to check.
okay. Bob, I'm going to ask the same question, the first question you had. Can we be sure that town citizens are considered first for all town jobs?
Okay.
Would you bring the account back to Stafford? The bookkeeping, do you envision the town farming out our bookkeeping, or would you bring job account back?
I think the girls we have sharing with Town of Batavia are doing a great job for us for what we're paying them. I was a little uncomfortable with the thought process at first, but you get to them with a question, they get right back to you. They're very, very good. Now, if that had to stop for some reason, yes, we would give preference to a Stafford resident that's qualified. But the way the state is pushing job, I don't want to call it job sharing, but shared services, it's going to be hard to get away from, even if we wanted to. And yeah, we do a good job of hiring qualified candidates from our town. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we want somebody that's vested in our town working for us? They're going to do a better job for you.
Thank you. Another question for you, which is, I think, this gives you a chance to say, in minimum, what do you do? What does the town council do? I think it's somebody's really wanting to do it.
We'll be in 2 minutes. Okay. We're the first line of complaint as a rule. People have a complaint, they look up their councilman, whether it's something we can take care of or not, whether it's a complaint about the court. I have no control over the court. I set their budget. I can't do anything other than set the budget. We set the budget for the town. We're responsible to the residents of the town. Any necessary laws that need to be made, any zoning changes that have to go through us. It's a lot bigger job than I knew I was taking on 4 years ago. I'm just getting the hang of it now, I think. So that's why I want to go one more time.
Okay. Mr. Young, and do you feel that it is hard to represent Stafford when the district you represent is an odd geographic district? Would you consider redrawing the district could serve us better?
I don't want to lose Stafford. I don't have a problem with the geographic area. I don't see a problem with that. I think it's relatively easy to do what I need to do for both my town of Batavia and my town of Stafford. I don't see it as an issue.
I'm going to ask all of you a question because there's a whole lot. Have you heard enough about solar?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you wanting me to continue with a few more of these?
Yeah.
Some people say no, some people say yes. So it's going to be like my classroom. If you have to get up and go to the bathroom, you go. If you leave, it's time to leave, you can leave. Are you up for some more here? Okay. Thank you. This is for everybody, right? Okay. This is for all of those who are running for the board. It has been, or the council. It has been our experience that the town council seems disinterested in the residents being exposed to concerning levels of toxicity. We know about the extreme levels of cancer in our town. What would you be willing to do to address this, especially as the DEC has already said that they can't help due to their being understaffed and underfunded? So our health and safety is squarely in the hands of the town council. Would you address this, please?
All right,
Well, somebody, yeah, so.
I'll take a swing at it. When you look at the one thing you have to remember is that towns are a construct of the state. The federal government is a construct of the state. That's the original government. We can do as much as the state has given us the ability to do. Consequently, we don't really have a lot to do with healthcare or human services at the town level. We're normally zoning, highway, police if we had it, courts we do have. We can act as advocates with the levels of government that do have those functions, but from a town point of view, we're limited.
Yeah, we are definitely limited, and I'm not sure it's a Stafford cancer issue as much as it is the whole Western New York. It's all over Western New York. It's not necessarily centered here. It seems higher here.
No, the health department numbers indicate Stafford as having nearly 50% higher rates of cancer than the rest
And
of
if they
the
can
state.
tell us why, we definitely try to address that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Well, you know, as a Democrat and just as you know, somebody that has those views, I think that, you know, public safety and public health are extremely important, right? And whatever we can do in order to, you know, uphold, you know, the health and safety of everybody in town, it's very important. So although there probably are limitations to what we can do, there's always, you know, we do have a voice. You know, you guys as residents have voices. We at the town board have voices. And, you know, we need to be able to hold people accountable, make sure that they are following, you know, safety standards, make sure that they are being compliant with whatever rules and regulations they need to be following. And, you know, there's always something we can do in order to make sure people are being held accountable. So I think that that's an important question. I think that that's an important issue. And I think that it's something that, you know, deserves some attention, you know, to some degree, even though we are only at a local level. These are issues that can be affecting us locally, where they may not really, you know, see it as big of a priority on, you know, a state level. So, so that's a very, you know, pointed and important issue.
Okay, thank you. Jackie, if you're up for it. I'm trying to conflate these questions where they're very, very similar. So generally, what these questions are asking, first one says, welcome to Stafford. I understand you work in Orleans County, you just moved to Stafford. Why did you choose our town? What is your vision for our town? On the opposite side of that, what's your background? And then we have one, how long have you lived in Stafford? You took out a quarter-page ad in the Penny Saver stating, a vote for you is a vote for change. What do you think needs changing here with the short amount of time you've lived here? Yeah, I think that
That's the
covers it.
gist,
Yeah.
okay. So I've been in Stafford for about 4 months. I came from Syracuse. And you know, I love it here so far. I think, you know, my background is in HR, like I said. Always been passionate about getting involved in my community, making connections with people. I think that's one of the major reasons that I'm doing this, is because I like to get to know people wherever I am, make an impact, make a change if I can, be a voice for people. So although I'm somewhat newer to the town, I've lived in New York State all my life, so I'm not really that much of an outsider. And what brought me here is actually my boyfriend's a podiatrist in Batavia, so he's been practicing there for a few years now. So that's what brought us here. It took me a little while to make the move and to make the change out here. We're first-time homeowners here, so we'll be here for a number of years to come. And like I said, we love it here. It's very quaint. I hope to help preserve the community and all the wonderful things about it. And as far as change, I just think change is a good thing. You know, I've been delving into the issues, bringing my unique perspective and my unique skill set from HR and both my political background in different political campaigns, the governor campaign in Massachusetts, the Deval Patrick campaign, and the most recent presidential campaign. So I've always been interested in politics. I've always been big on public service. So I really have just delved right in, learning the issues, meeting people, making connections with people again, because that's one of the major reasons why I'm doing this. So whether I win or whether I don't, I think it's been wonderful to get to know people here and to make connections and to put down roots. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. And Margaret can, if you need to go, go. It's not a, my job is to ask you questions. If you're still wanting to hear answers to the questions and you folks are willing to soldier on, then we're, there's so many, which is just remarkable because I come from a place where there aren't. All right, so I'm going to ask the council. Would you support or oppose a major chain convenience store gas station developing a location in the town? Bob.
Haven't made that yet. A major chain? Personally, I'd like to see a Dunkin' Donuts between me and work. But that's just personally. I don't know that we necessarily need a major chain. You can pretty much get what you want right here at the Shell's Post, and he's open most of the time. I like the at-home atmosphere here. There's chains in both towns near us. You can go there. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the concept.
Okay.
Now, the big company's got big cars.
We won't provide incentives for someone to come. The best way to sum it up.
Okay. Jackie, got a fast one?
Sure.
Yeah, I think you know, I'm not opposed to it if it's something that people want and it's something that's going to help, you know, increase our quality of life here and more convenient. But you know, I agree that anything you would need can be found either close by in Batavia or what we already have here. So I think it's important to preserve, you know, the quaintness and the local businesses that we have here already.
Thank you all. One more very specific one from the three of you. And so we'll start with Ron. Would you consider posting town info in the penny savers, which we all receive, instead of the daily, which must be purchased?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I would consider, but the law is specific on what the publication of record is, and if we can get past that, clearly the penny saver is superior. I use the penny saver for my Christmas tree farm, and it's better than the daily news for getting people there. So,
I'd also like to see it go on the town website as well, because I check there. So.
Sorry, what was the question again?
The question was, would you consider putting the town information in the penny saver instead of in the Batavia Daily where you have to buy it? In the penny saver you don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think information should be, you know, freely given to the residents. I don't think you should necessarily have to buy it. So, I mean, I think that's a good idea that could definitely be explored. And I think, you know, utilizing the website, you know, whatever ways that we can get the information out to the people and not have to pay for it, I think that's a good idea.
Oh, right. I have one more that says, these can be read. All right. So, the Town of Stafford permits the spreading of human waste. It is toxic and could be sent to a water treatment center, but you have allowed this practice to proceed. Erie, Monroe, and other counties do not permit this practice. Do you have the authority to prohibit this? Are you considering it? I'm going to say that that's with you two since it's about current practice. So
It's been permitted under DEC regulation. They're monitored by the DEC, and it will continue to unless we change that. We have no reason to stop it.
Again, it's the same. The licensing goes through the DEC. They're the ones that monitor them. I see no reason to change that.
Okay. Julie, this is still a stack of questions. I'm going to ask it as best I can.
It's still a what question?
A stack of questions for you. So I'm
There's
gonna,
like a host staff.
That one she already answered.
She did. If you get elected and take minutes at a heated meeting, at the end of that meeting, and you are asked to omit parts or change words that were said, would you do it?
Well, first of all, I haven't learned what the policy is. I don't know if it has to be verbatim, but I work for the court. We deal with a lot of angry people there, you know, because they aren't local people. Usually the people they're coming in from through it. And they just get themselves in such a pickle, it's hard to get out. So it's easy to take your frustration out on somebody when you don't know.
What's that?
I don't know procedurally how I would have to do that. I would have to
Okay,
learn it.
no, that's a specific enough answer. We don't know the procedure. I have to ask this. Frankly, I have to say that I find this a troubling question, but as a moderator, I can say that there's a couple questions that I didn't think were relevant immediately, and the time is passing. But I think I need to ask this. Your petitions were rejected at the election office and had to be completed again, this says. A town clerk must follow directions and instructions for legal documents. If you can't hand in petitions correctly, how can you be a clerk? Now,
No, I omitted one word. And when I took them up there, the commissioner of jurors, and it really was a blessing in disguise. Because instead of getting 55 signatures, I ended up getting 125. Because I went to completely different homes.
okay, that's fair enough.
Well, it's a learning process. I've never run. I've learned a lot by going through the board of elections.
All right. There are other questions, and any of you who want to see them, certainly. This is extraordinary. I have never been at a meeting where there were this many questions, so I'm not trying to race through them, but I am trying to be kind to all of you. Do Julie or Michelle, do you have any other thing you want to offer about your qualifications? I've got some cards about qualifications. So, Michelle, let's start with you.
Who's got the money?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I know it's been said that I have not technically run an office. That is true, except at the church where I am the church secretary, and I do run the secretarial portion of that. My experience, but I have been on a lot of different computer programs, like I named before, and I'm for the people, for the community. I've lived here 30 years, and I want to work for you, and that's why I've gone through this process.
Well, I've learned a lot working in the court, and I'd like to bring my experience there across the hall. There is going to be a learning curve. I have plenty of experience on computer software. I have a lot of connections with a lot of agencies, a lot of businesses, just for working as long as I have for the town. Because it's not always court-related matters. You're helping people with other things. There's weddings going on. There's so much more to the job than what, I mean, the updating the phone system is a big thing, because we've talked about. The grant writing, I'd like to bring that across the hall, because there's so many grants in this state that aren't even being used. I would like to help save money for the town, and by doing grant writing, it does. Like the grant writing I've done so far, the town is very good about purchasing things. I didn't have to get a metal detector, I got it through the state. The wand, some computer updates the state pays for. Our scanning machines, our computers, I get them through the state pays for that we've already paid our tax dollars into. So I'd like to bring some of that experience that I have had here, because I do love working for this town. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to take it upon myself to say this is the last question. If people want to stay after, or you want to stay after and talk, then that's good, because we've going into 20 minutes overtime, and you've all been very patient, and this is cool.
And we're hungry for donuts.
And yeah, and that's all right. So this to all three of the councilors. Now that town taxes must make up the largest quantity in the Stafford Fire Department budget, please discuss using the large marker, is that right, for notifications of, the large marquee for notifications of church functions, town functions, and other announcements as a way of fostering community participation. Julie, you want to start? Or Jackie, you want to start?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, now that town taxes must make up the largest quantity, make up the large amounts of dollar gaps in the Stafford Fire Department budget, please discuss using the large marquee for notification of church functions, town functions, and other announcements as a way of furthering community participation.
Okay, I think I understand it now. So I'm aware that, that now that the local fire department is no longer able to do the classic car auctions, that it's fallen back on the town board. Instead of, asking for, getting, $250,000 in raised funds from that, they're getting a lot less, and they're needing more funding from the town in order to make up for it. So I understand the reasoning behind the question. So in return, I think the question is saying, are there ways that we can use the fire department resources to help, publicize and gain participation in some of the other events? I think that's a good idea. The fire department has done a great job in raising money, and it's a beautiful place that they have over there. So I think it would, I don't see why we couldn't use the marquee, but that would be something that we would have to, discuss, make sure everybody, agrees, and that the fire department agrees as well, that it's something that they think is a good idea too. So a consensus would have to be brought.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, so.
Well, the fire department, even though they're using your tax dollars now, they're still a private organization. They bought the sign themselves. We'd have to get their permission to put our notifications on their board. What we need to do is get Governor Cuomo to sign proper legislation to allow them to have their Corvette raffle back again, which
That's right.
brought in way more money than we could ever afford to supply them with, and we are just keeping their doors open with what they're getting now. They give us monthly spreadsheets of their accounts. We know what they've got, what they're spending it on, and they've been fortunate enough that we cut almost $100,000 out of their ask from last year for the first year, and they've asked for no more to keep their doors open than they got last year. So they're doing what they can. They're doing a great job over there. But we need to get off their butts and fix our problem that they created. And we'll be back to what we need here in Western New York. They're out of touch.
Thank you.
Okay, a simple answer, no. It is up to the fire department to decide what they want on their marquee. For how many years have they been providing a service for a contribution of $80,000, where now it's gone to $300,000. So it's their board. If they wish to do community activity, by all means, but it is strictly through the fire department.
Are you satisfied? I want to thank you all very much for asking that staff questions, and I want to thank you for answering specifically, and I think this has been a really fine session. And now there is food, so thank you one and all. I think they deserve it.
I just want to reiterate that there were questions that were put aside. I think that Norm and myself, I tried to help them put some together. Some of the questions that were not asked were not appropriate for this forum. They were not appropriate, and I'm sorry.
They weren't a focal point.
They were not about politics, and they're all right here. Anyone can come and read them and look at them.
That's fine. It's on me. That's what a moderator has to do. Okay. So, all right.
Yeah, I just, want to just say to everybody, One of the most profound human things that you can do is to talk to someone instead of talk about them. And I think some of the questions related to things that, again, were not appropriate. So with that said, I just want to move along here and just say that everybody knows that the election that's coming up is crucial. We're in another, we find ourselves in another political climate, and we urge everyone in this room to please go out and vote. You need to take the next step after listening tonight and exercise your right to vote. The polls will be open from 6 to 9 p.m. next Tuesday, November 7th. Please, please vote. And one more quote before I let everyone go. Never, ever doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. That was by Margaret Mead, not Margaret DeBellis. So just a reminder too that on the voting day, the Historical Society will have their bake sale going on. And if everyone wants to just stay still for one more minute, I am going to have someone choose for the, I don't know, like how to really do this.
What?
Margaret,
put them in here, stir them up.
Well, I don't know whether the basket's like not big enough. I think we need to go like this. This is my husband right here. He has to put up with this every day of his life.
Okay, so I'm taking this on myself too.
65, you think
I'm going to ask one of my students to draw. Jackie Cavanaugh.
Yay!
Thank you very much, everybody.
Hop right over here and help yourself to donuts